Hello, everyone. My name is Mohammed Imran Ansari, and I'm a certified Scrum Master. I am also a professional Scrum Master. I'll be giving you an overview about Scrum foundations, how Scrum works, what is Agile, what are the different kind of ceremonies, what are the different kind of features which it has, what are the different tools which you should use. So basically, this is more of like understanding the concepts today. We'll understand the concept, how the overall things work, and then we will start implementing in our further. This training is only to make you aware of what are the concepts of Agile and Scrum. Now, coming back to the question that, Arey, why are we doing this? Agile and DevOps go hand in hand. You need to have that understanding because in DevOps also, what are you trying to achieve through this? Right? We're trying to achieve faster time to market so that you have faster deliveries, you have customer feedback faster, etc., etc. Agile also focuses on actually giving the customer the bare minimum things as fast as possible. And the moment you fail faster, when you have iterations in sprint, which are of shorter duration, you can actually achieve that results, share it with your like stakeholders, and then get a candid feedback about it. So those are the things which we are going to talk about. I know there are a lot of people who might be knowing the some terms of agile, how agile works. There are a lot of organization also who says that we are doing agile, but they are still following something like half of waterfall model and half of agile. So today we're going to talk about most of the processes, definition, jargons, tools, what kind of processes which we used in order to plan our work. What is the team structure look like? Who does what? What are the different roles in this? We'll all talk about that. So objectives of this meeting, as I said, provide foundational understanding of Scrum, use information learned about Scrum to spur further conversation outside the training. So that's what we will do when we have to actually adopt this on your side. Which tool, maybe Azure DevOps, boards, etc., we'll do after that training. So today you have to maybe unlearn something, like because teaching something is not important. Most important part from our side today would be unlearning the previous information which we have about waterfall, about agile. Let's leave it as it is. Let's learn new things today. Create desire to learn more. So I want you to see Scrum everywhere, like everywhere. I'm not sure whether you're in office, but even if you're at home, please see Scrum everywhere. You can actually implement it everywhere, even if it is with your child's education, even if it is when you are actually making food, that also helps with Scrum. Anyways, coming back to the agenda. So what are we gonna do today? We already did the welcomes and introductions. We'll talk about foundations, agile, Scrum roles, planning. How do we do that? How do we create product backlog? What is product backlog? What are work items, user story? How do we size? How do we order that? How do we do sprint planning? I will explain you what is sprint as well before going to that. And how do you create the sprint backlog? How do you do product backlog refinement? And then typical sprint cycle where you will be actually performing daily stand-ups, we'll do sprint reviews and sprint retrospectives. And then we'll just have some closing thoughts with all the knowledge. I'll have a quiz or maybe I'll have some Q&A sessions, which will help us to understand how much you have grasped. Now, let's talk about what is Agile. Okay. Agile is a set of values and principles providing a foundation for decision making. Now, there are a lot of values and principles associated with it, which helps the team to form beliefs about how to make decisions, which in turns give a way to which in turn drives the way how the work gets done. It requires a growth mindset. And what is a growth mindset? So individuals with growth mindset believes that they can acquire any given ability provided they invest their efforts in study. So they believe in consistency. They believe in that, okay, if I'm doing this thing with a proper, genuine effort and with a detailed study, I can certainly achieve the results. So this information which you see is on the Agile Manifesto. Agile Manifesto was a result of group of practitioners getting together on a ski trip. So what happened, just like you might be doing your picnics, similarly, there were a few like-minded people who came on a ski trip in Utah. I think it's in the US. And talking about all the practices they used to get work done. I mean, few people talk about waterfall, people talked about their limitations, etc. And then they decided to come up with a set of values and principles that apply to all the practices. Okay. Now, if you see on the board, we have values such as individual and interactions, working solution, customer collaboration, responding to change, process and tools, comprehensive documentation, contract negotiation, and following a plan. All these are important. All these are a part of Agile. But when it comes to value those things, right? So we value the things on the left more than the values on the right, right? So we do believe in individuals and interactions more than the process and tools. Process and tools are a part of your process, I mean, of your organization, but you need to believe in individuals and their interactions. You need to focus on them. You need to talk face-to-face conversation with the team, self-organization, self-organizing teams. So what are self-organizing teams? Who discuss and step up, take their own calls. So those kind of teams who are self-sufficient to find their own solutions. Working solutions are important more than comprehensive documentation. Now think about it. You have like pretty much specifications, documentations, etc. But the solution which you are building or the engineers are delivering is not up to the mark. So what will you do with that? The customer will never be happy. He might be happy if you give them a working solution rather than a documentation. Customer collaboration over contract negotiations, prices, timelines, etc. is important, but collaborating the customer is more important. When you collaborate the stakeholders and customers with your process, when you are actually building things, it helps them to understand what you are doing, what happens when a recent change has been introduced. Maybe the log4j vulnerability recently added a lot of pain in lot of projects, right, recently. And the customers would be like, hey, what happened? You just have to remove one log4j dll or whatever, but there were a lot of things which were dependent on that. We had to change a lot of things. So when you actually collaborate the customer, how do you collaborate the customer? You can have frequent meetings. You can make sure that the things are transparent on the board. You can make sure that once you're delivering the things, you are actually having a review with them. So regular reviews. It's not a final review, right? Regular reviews to make sure that they are also understanding the pain and the efforts. Responding to change over following a plan. It should never be, you should never stick to follow a single plan, because changes are always there. Changes will be there. I mean, whether it could be conditions change due to market conditions, maybe some technology change, maybe somebody started a GDPR rule, right, which you need to accommodate in your plan. So you cannot just focus on sticking on a particular plan. You have to respond to a change. So similarly, there were other principles also which were very, very focused on Agile, which was customer satisfaction, welcoming change, frequent delivery. Frequent delivery is also associated with failing fast. We are not saying that we are getting succeeded. We are saying we want to fail fast. Why we want to fail fast? Because if we fail at the last minute, then the whole project goes for a toss. So why don't we fail fast? The moment we do a change, the moment we do something, just deliver it to the customer in a MVP, that is minimum viable product. And we can say that, hey, this is what we have built, and maybe it is as per your expectation. Can you please comment on that? Close cooperation. When we say close cooperation, involve the stakeholders, involve the customers regularly on a regular basis. Motivated individuals, always motivate the team members you are working with. Sustainable development. When you are actually making sure you are working on any kind of model, you need to make sure the development process is sustainable. That means you do not have to work one night or maybe a few nights at the end of the project to deliver the things. You need to do that efforts every day to make sure that you do not spend up nights delivering that project. Deliver working solutions rather than delivering a broken product or with some showstoppers. Better give them a smaller product, which is like a working solution. Face to face conversation. Have a face to face conversation in this pandemic period also. Like, we are actually behind the camera. Why don't we just open up the camera and we face each other? We understand each other's expression, like pain points. Maybe somebody is happy about it, somebody is having problems. Why don't we discuss that face to face? Technical excellence. Have a growth mindset, have a learning mindset where you can actually learn new things, new projects, try to share with your peers, etc. Simplicity. Now, simplicity is a concept which says that, okay, deliver the bare minimum things, like simple as it can be. I mean, when you are being said that you need something, just make that particular something. Do not add some, extra cream over it right now. Just deliver the simple part first. If it is good, then you deliver the complex one. Self-organizing teams. So self-organizing teams means teams who are self-reliant, who do not need any specific directions that you need to do this, you need to do that. The team itself knows that this is what we have to achieve, and they themselves help each other as well as try to achieve that particular goal. Reflect and adjust. Reflect and adjust focuses on a kind of retrospective. So there is a process of retrospective here as well, where you actually see what has been done and how can you improve that process. How can you improve all the things which you have done in your previous sprint, etc. So you need to learn from your mistakes. You need to understand where did you do good and try to improve it more. So these are the things which are agile values and principles. So this is very basic. Some people might be finding boring as well, but this is very important because it is the crux. It is how the agile has been formed. If you see on the left of the screen, there is agilemanifesto.org. It's a site where all these values and principles are shared. You can go there, you can check it, you can read more about it. Yeah. So let's talk about Scrum. So Scrum, if you see, Agile is an umbrella. Under that umbrella, we have lot of frameworks, which we have Scrum, we have Scrumban, we have Kanban, we have Lean, etc., etc. And there are a lot of things, Safe, Agile, PM, etc. Right? And if you talk about the framework, we are going to talk about Scrum today. So it's the most popular framework for achieving things. A framework within which people can address complex adaptive problems while productively and creatively delivering products of the highest possible value. So that's what Scrum is. We'll talk more about it. This is a kind of a textbook definition here, but we'll go through the whole life cycle of that Scrum and we'll talk about it. Scrum values, and this has been taken from scrum.org. So the base start of Agile, we start with Scrum. Okay, and depending on the team. For example, if you see Kanban, right, bottom left, right, Kanban is a framework which actually focuses on a continuous flow of work, right, especially working with support teams. So when you have support team where the requirement comes so fast that you have to first start something, finish that particular stuff, and then go to pick up some other topic or other task. That's kind of environment when we have, then we use Kanban. So it depends from team to team, but before that also, this is the fundamental of like framework where you understand Scrum, then you can go on other frameworks as well. And as per what I understand from your perspective, that is what is the best thing for you, like Scrum. If you want to improve slowly, once you adapt Scrum, and if you want to adapt more on the other topics, you can certainly do that. But right now, let's understand how Scrum is, what are the values and principles, how do we do Scrum, what are the terminologies, and then certainly you can read more about it, and we can certainly depend on other frameworks as well. So if you see the bottom side, right, lightweight approaches, those are like very simple straightforward approaches where you just need a few things to be configured. One team is there, it's good. But when you have more teams to be like managed, like Scrum of Scrums, if you see on the top, Scrum at scale, then you have to use different, like one level up of that particular Scrum level. So basically it's more about, for that also you need to understand what is Scrum, right? So now don't get confused between agile values and Scrum values. Scrum values are different. Okay, this has been taken from scrum.org, a website, and this is Scrum values: focus, commitment, respect, and openness. Trust me, why are we going through this training is to make sure that we understand these values and principles before we start that, because these are the things which we need to adapt as a team. We need to have the courage. The Scrum team members should have that courage to do the right thing and work on tough problems, right? Focus. Everyone focuses on the work of the sprint and goals of the Scrum team. We'll talk about what is sprint and we'll talk about what is the Scrum team in the next few slides. Commitment. People personally committed to achieving the goals of the Scrum team. Respect. Scrum team members respect each other to be capable, independent people. I mean, everybody is not the same, right? You need to have respect to all the members, whether it is junior member, senior member, whether people of maybe there are few designers, there would be few developers, QA people. Everyone should respect each other and have a trust between each other, which is very difficult, right? Openness. So the Scrum team and its stakeholders agrees to be open about all the work and the challenges with performing the work, right? So you need to be open about what are the difficulties, what are the challenges, and that has to be shared with the stakeholders as well, because they need to understand what you're working on, right? Sometimes you actually build large products with a lot of difficulties, but when it's been seen as an output, it's like very small to the stakeholders. So then they feel that, you know what, this is very small. Why did it take too much time? So for that, we need to be very, very open about it. Now, Scrum theory. Scrum is founded on empirical process control theory, known as empiricism. Okay. And these are the three foundations of Scrum. So, empiricism asserts that the knowledge comes from experience and making decisions based on what is known. We have transparency, inspection, and adaptation as a three pillar of Scrum. Now, what is transparency? Significant aspects of the process must be visible to those responsible for the outcome, right? For example, I'll give you an example of the transparency would be something like a board, common board, Azure DevOps board, right? Or a board where anybody can see, come and see what exactly is been happening. Where is my project? Where is my project? And how many people are actually working on that? How many people are lagging behind? Where my project or my product lies? So all these questions can be transparently seen on that particular board. We should also have a common terminologies, right? For example, when we say that this particular item has been completed, that should be the same understanding of all the members of the team. It should not, like, because I believe that when I was a developer, I used to finish coding and then it was like, okay, it's been done. But maybe I did not check the testing policies, maybe negative testing, stress testing, etc. Whatever. I did not thought about if somebody will put this value, it might be broken. All these kind of things should be taken into consideration, and it should be a generic for all the team members. And will come. That is called definition of done. We'll come to that particular part. Inspection. So inspection. So Scrum users must frequently inspect Scrum artifacts and progresses towards the sprint goal to detect undesirable variances. Now, the inspection should not be so frequent. It should be like need to actually check. For example, when we create Scrum, we have something called a burn down chart where we daily people can put their efforts and we can see, hey, maybe my process is maybe my project is under control, people are under timelines and things are going very smoothly. That could be one of the inspection. You can see other sprint goals and artifacts. Okay, maybe my sprint goal was this, but we are actually deviating from the sprint goal by doing something else. So that can also be done through that. Then adaptation. Adaptation is nothing but if an inspector determines that one or more aspects of this process deviated outside the acceptable limit, okay, and that the resulting product will be unacceptable, the process or materials being used or processed must has to be adjusted. Now, when you do that adjustment, that is called adaptation. Like you learned from something, okay, you saw that this is not working or maybe this is not going to work, you adapted that particular problem, or maybe you found a solution and you try to adapt that. Scrum describes four formal events for inspection and adaptation, such as sprint planning. We'll talk about what is sprint planning, daily Scrum, sprint review, and sprint retrospective. So these are the things which the Scrum will focus on basis of inspection and adaptation. Coming back to this slide, this is more about the agile methodology or popularity of Scrum. If you see 56% of people uses Scrum, and I still do not have the latest one here, but I think it would be some few percentage is here and there. If you see 5% people uses Kanban, Scrum or hybrid XP is used by 6%. Scrum Ban, which is a combination of Scrum plus Kanban, is also being adopted by few teams, 8%. And so on. So lean is 1%, extreme programming is 1%, etc., etc. But Scrum is the most popular one. So that's from the. So let's talk about the approach. So in traditional approach as well as Scrum. So in this approach, in traditional approach, we freezes the scope, that this is the scope, and estimate the schedule. That we decide that this is what we need to do. Then we tell you how much time will be required, right? In Scrum, we say freezes the schedule. Like we will deliver it in 2 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever time we decide. And then we define what can we deliver between those time box iterations, right? Ulta hai. There's a difference. There we were actually getting the scope and then scheduling the timelines. Here we are having our timelines first that, okay, maybe we'll have within 2 weeks or within 4 weeks, we can do this much amount of work. And then we decide this is our scope. Teams, external dependencies, and in Scrum, we call it self-sufficient. So Scrum team contains a QA, they have developers, they have IT people, they have so basically the whole team is self-sufficient. Everybody have to help each other. Team size, any number of people. But here in Scrum, we recommend 8 or fewer people. That is not a hard line. It's just a guideline. Have more than 8 people as well. Release time frame, when you do with a typical, like, I don't know about new guys, but I did a textile project since I joined. So I think it takes years as well in traditional projects. In Scrum, it's mostly weeks or months. Why we say weeks or months? Because the iteration cannot cross one single iteration cannot cross 4 weeks. So within a few weeks, you have to, or within one iteration, you have to deliver a MVP that is most viable product. Energy for change is little low in traditional because then you're like, oh, I created so much and at last moment you're saying to add this particular part. In Scrum, it is high because in every sprint you can change few things based on that. Shall we? Okay. Okay. So I was at management. In the management, in the traditional workflow, you have control of management, which people like. But in Scrum, we have servant leadership. We have Scrum Master, which is more focused on facilitating things rather than actually making sure that, giving directions or giving control, etc. Work assignments is usually done by project manager in traditional, and here again, self-organizing team. They do their own tasks on their own. Planning, detailed plans are upfront, but here it is adaptive planning. Understand what adaptive planning is. Adaptive planning is like a sprint planning where you are actually making sure that this is the things which we can work on this particular, and we do it in iterations. Client involvement at the beginning and at the end of the delivery. But here we have frequent collaborations. Delivery, again, the big bang, one at a time, like exactly once it is over. And in Scrum, we have frequent increments. So now you tell me on your side, what do you feel? What are the differences which you feel in traditional as well as Scrum? Or what are you been doing? How do you work right now? Maybe you are doing Scrum, you don't know, right? The stakeholders are the client, right? Maybe for the stakeholders, the actual customers are facing the applications are their clients, but for you, your team is your client. So that's absolutely correct, and that will happen. So you'll actually see a lot of terms and standards where you say, "Wait, this we have done, but there is some places where you need to fix and what do you call improve yourself on that." This is what the Scrum framework looks like. It's like if you have to summarize Scrum in one picture, this is how it looks like. We have the product owner. We have a product backlog here. If you can see my cursor here, a rank list of work. We'll talk about what is product backlog. Here is the team. And then we break down those product backlog into some items, which is called spring backlog. And then we work on these items within a iteration of 1 to 4 weeks. You can choose weeks or sprint. Sprint is nothing, but it is an iteration, okay, where you have to complete your tasks. Now it could be 1 week, it could be 4 weeks. Ideally it is advisable that it should not go beyond 4 weeks, otherwise it becomes waterfall, right? If you're delivering it within after a few months, then what's the point? So within 4 weeks it has to be. Then you will have daily stand-ups every 24 hours at the same time, at the same place, where you will be just discussing. So one question, one suggestion: daily stand-up is not PM or any manager asking the team what they did. Daily stand-up is the team coming and sharing what they did today, what are they planning to do tomorrow, and if they have any roadblocks while they are working or progressing towards the goal. So we'll talk about those parts as well, but that's what clarity has to be. Everyone in every organization do daily stand-ups, and we call it Scrum meetings. But what they do, the manager is asking like, "Kal kya kiya?" That's not the purpose of that, right? The purpose is the team itself, because the team doesn't need any direction. They just know what has to be done. If they are having some problems, they will share in that meeting as well. Now, sprint review is a process once you have a potentially shippable product. It could be very small item as well, based on your sprint goal or sprint items. Once it is done, you do a sprint review with the stakeholders. You can call people, you can have your team or maybe your internal product team, and you can have a sprint review with them, get the feedback of what exactly was their expectation and what we have made. So that has to be done in sprint review. Then comes the sprint retrospective. Once the sprint review is done, then you will come to the sprint retrospective part where you will discuss few things like what went well, and how can we improve? What are the things which we can adapt? So all these blocks we will see in detail, but this is how exactly the Scrum framework looks like. Coming back to Scrum team roles. So I have a slide for each and individual role, but this is what a Scrum team looks like. You have a dev team. So don't get confused with the word dev team. Dev team can be QA, dev team can be a designer, dev team can be a IT person. So dev team is nothing, but it is the team who will be working on that particular sprint. So that is a dev team. We have a product owner, we have a Scrum Master, dev team. These are the few roles. Now we'll focus on individual roles. Product owner. So this is the role which you saw on the first, like in the previous slide, the first was product owner. Focus on what or the product, right? So what, why, who, prioritization, value. So basically, he has to get the ROI of the project. So what is a Scrum or sorry, product owner responsible for? So he is the one who manages the product backlog. So he creates and maintains clearly descriptive information about the product backlog items, what has to be created. He's the one who prioritizes the items to best achieve goals and missions and ensures that the team understands the same items in the product backlog. That is a very important part of this particular role. So PO, we also call it as a PO, product owner maintains the product backlog. He prioritizes the item and he cannot prioritize himself. He can prioritize with the dev team in picture, right? He can ask, okay, how much time do you think will this part or this particular item will take? What are the technical difficulties or challenges where we will face this? All these things. So maybe with the team help of dev team, but the responsibility of backlog. So backlog is nothing but it is a set of work items which has to be created or which has to be completed in order to achieve the end goals. So that is created and maintained by product owner. Release management, responsible for business outcomes and goal. Yes, he is doing that. Creates and maintains release plans. Stakeholder management gathers and understands end users' needs and is the voice for them for the team. Like so, basically, product owner is kind of mediator between the what do you call stakeholders and the dev team. When we say the dev team, the people, because he gets the requirement from the stakeholders, he decides what is important for the stakeholders and what is not. He decides when to do what, and then he gives the same information to the dev team. Work closely with the Scrum teams, so ensures everyone on the team understands what is required and responsible for validating and accepting the sprint results because he is the one who has defined and told that these are the priority items which has to be delivered in this particular sprint. Now, in your organization, you may hear the term product manager, as we spoke about, right? What's the difference between a product owner, a product manager? So, in product manager, what do they do? Orchestrates the product vision among multiple product owners, maybe work with product owners and priority across all of them, works with product owners on value and business impact, maybe provides leadership on product goals. And this is an optional role based on scale of the products and team needs, right? But in your PO responsibility, they owns the product vision from a customer point of view. He's the kind of customer product. So basically, main takeaway or key things which we have to learn here is product owner focuses on what of the product and he is responsible for the product backlog and he is responsible for managing and prioritization of that particular backlog. So if there is any item in the backlog on the top, that is responsibility of a product owner, why it is and when it was being done. Then comes the Scrum Master. The Scrum Master guides the Scrum team from external requests and disruptions. Now we will not take any change. If there is any change, go to a PO and then put a requisition The PO will add that particular stuff in the sprint backlog, prioritize it. So the role of Scrum Master is to coach the team on the Scrum framework and making them regularly adapt and inspect that what is going to happen, making and facilitating meetings like all the ceremonies which we spoke about, like sprint planning, daily scrum, sprint review, sprint retrospective. All these meetings has to be created or facilitated by Scrum Master. So Scrum Master is a facilitator, ensures efficient communication and collaboration between the Scrum team and the product owner, facilitating various Scrum events. We spoke about it now. So this kind of role is more about like an embedded team member. It's not necessary that a Scrum Master cannot work in a team. Yes, there might be people who can work in a team as a dev team member, also play a role of Scrum Master. He's a servant leader. He collaborates closely with the product owner, educates and supports the product owner in backlog refining and prioritization. So, as I mentioned in the previous slide, right, the product owner has to prioritize what is important, what is not important. He can and what can be done, right? He can take the like help from the dev team as well as he can facilitate the event, as I mentioned, protects the team from disturbances, try to remove roadblocks. So basically, his job is to make sure that if somebody tells me in the Scrum meeting that, hey, I am having this particular roadblock, Scrum Master's responsibility is to make sure he connects to different people. He tries to figure out who can help this guy or a team member to make sure that how can he achieve the desired results. So that is a Scrum Master, a cross between what and how. So there is always, so Scrum Master is responsible for facilitating things and guarding things, right? So when the PO and the sprint goal has been decided that these are the items has to be created, right? Maybe you given 5 items that has to be created and deployed, but some external request comes into picture. Yes, that is important, and you get many times. Sometimes even the importance of that particular item is not there. Then also you get that particular request. So you cannot cater to all the requests. What the request has to go through a product owner. Product owner will talk to Scrum Master. Hey, we have to put this in, and then Scrum Master will say, hey, we are already burdened with a lot of items, or maybe we do have some scope of working on it, but if you want this item to be very, very important, if you see that, for as I mentioned, that log4j, right? Recently it happened. That was a very, very important thing. Everybody left their job and they started doing the fixes. So similarly, then the Scrum Master role is to make sure that tell the product owner to remove something out of the sprint and then put this particular piece, right? You cannot just take request ad hocly or maybe adding on top of it. You have to remove also because that is your capacity. Your capacity is full. You're saying, okay, you're taking maybe giving me a 3 days of work. You have to remove one item which is not important, because right now when you're actually working on anything, the product owner has to think about it. What is the most important thing which is needed first? So certainly when the Scrum Master role is to make sure that, hey, if you are giving me some work, take this work out of my sprint and maybe we'll do it later. So that's how the Scrum Master will safeguard that particular rule, right? There are clients, I understand, but the product owner, the functionality features can be controlled through your stakeholder teams, right? The team can control, okay, maybe this feature is really, really important and this will go this month, and maybe the other few which was supposed to release can go next month as well. But yes, there are been instances, as I mentioned, right? Company uses it on their needs, or maybe on their, they just try to leverage that. Okay, maybe people can expect more endless nights to work on and make sure that that has been delivered. But what will be the outcome of it, right? I understand you are very happy with working, you are very focused and self sufficient on working on first task, but somebody actually burdens you with more work. The morale and the other, what do you call the enthusiasm goes away, and then you get a poor quality of work. Maybe take only 8 days of work, say that those 2 days we will just either groom that particular work item, or maybe if we have more time, there might be sometimes where you can actually get more information and more time to solve the problem, right? That time you can certainly add more items to the sprint. That doesn't mean you will sit idle. Your PO can add more items, that okay, you have completed it early, very good, thank you very much. Do you have more time? You can use it for learning, and or you can have more work in the sprint, you can add more stories to the sprint. So initially, you should have, if you know that things are getting regular, just put a blocker. put a block of maybe some story points. What are story points? I'll come in few other slides, but put some story points for production outages. That maybe at least 2 days of production outages are expected. You can have multiple Scrum Masters. You can have a single Scrum Master as well. When you can have a team member also run as a Scrum Master. Maybe there is a team member who wants to play a role of, because Scrum Master is nothing but it's just like facilitating the events and removing the roadblocks, as we mentioned, right? Just to remove the roadblocks and to facilitate meetings, to facilitate the ceremonies, which we will talk about. Utna hi kaam hai uska. So it can be the person who will be a part of the team, or it can be one person, as you mentioned, who can manages all the Scrum teams, like not manages, I should say, who can see all the Scrum teams. Maybe he can be a part of different Scrum teams, go in their Scrum events, and do the same thing for them. But then it becomes a full-time role for that, right? So because when we always say that when we are actually trying something new, or we are trying or adapting something new, just try to make one person from your team or that particular Scrum team as a Scrum Master, because he understands the in and out of that particular module or project, right? Because he understands that, okay, what are the difficulties, who shall I approach to, who can fix this. So all these things he can manage it well. So that's the only reason. But yes, because if you see in organizations, there is a specific Scrum Master, Scrum team roles, right? So the dev team. So the dev team focuses on how the delivery part, like how will we achieve this. So it's a cross-functional team. They have a common goal, right? In various areas. So basically, they have to follow a common goal, adhere to the same norms and rules which they have created for each other. They have to show respect to each other. That's very, very important. They should not treat anybody like you are a QA, you are a developer, you are a XYZ. You should always respect the team members because you are working towards a common goal. Various areas of expertise based on the needs of the product. They need to, because it could be, there are, as I mentioned, right, people who might be very good in, there might be people with different experiences. One developer is having 10 years of experience, the other developer, thank you. Okay, one developer might have less experience, one developer might have more experience. Everybody has to be having the same kind of respect with each other. Also, you should be doing less of that's not my job, that is or somebody else's job. And rather than the focus should be, how can I help the team? I would like to learn with that or learn with them, right? So these things can be done. And it could be anything. Like if you see the titles, it could be a developer, data scientist, QA tester, analyst, or PM, etc. Whatever. So many things can be clubbed together here. Now, Scrum team. When we talk about Scrum team, what is a Scrum team? A Scrum team as a whole is the product owner, Scrum Master, and the dev team. And those are the stakeholder users. Where if you see that guy with the yellow box, that's the product owner. The guy with the cap is the Scrum Master, and this is the dev team. At a whole, they are called Scrum team. And those are the stakeholders which you are catering to. Okay. So if you see back to back of, if you go to the basics of Scrum, right, you'll need to understand how these terms map with your current role and organization. Like, I think maybe. So now these are the roles. How do you map your team or your organization in these roles? Now, you have to make a Scrum team. How will you do that? Role. So we were here. Now comes the product backlog, right? So if you see on the I had shown you this picture, right? This picture, which was the Scrum picture framework. So now if you see, we are on the left part where we are talking about product backlog. What is product backlog, right? So, okay, if you see on the right hand side, we have something called product backlog, which is having item as well as size of the item. And we'll come to what is size and other things. A product backlog is an ordered list of everything that is known to be needed in the product or that has to be delivered to the in the product, right? It is a single source of requirements for any changes to be made on the product. The product owner, as I mentioned in the previous slide, the product owner is responsible for product backlog, including its content availability audit, right? So who's accountable for product backlog? The product owner is responsible. Everything which has to be taken or worked upon will be taken from this particular backlog. This is nothing but it is an ordered set of items or work items which are being prioritized and ordered based on the importance. So the most important item is being put on the top so that, whenever we are working on the most important item. So that is the simple product backlog. Coming back to backlog as well as user stories. What are user stories? And this is very important because right now when you will be working on Azure DevOps boards task, you will find a lot of terms called features, epic, user stories, task. So in backlog, we have something called user stories, which are short, simple description of work told from a perspective of a person who desired the value not currently being received, usually a user or a customer of the system. Okay, so understand this definition this is very important because those are very short, simple descriptions of work told from the perspective of a person. Like if a customer is telling you, he'll tell it from his perspective, who doesn't have that value yet or who hasn't received that, but still it's usually a customer of the system. Now, how does that look like? Okay, the user stories has to be in the form of invest principle. So this is more of a foundation whenever you are creating any user story, and this is very important from a PO as well as the team's perspective, because these like pointers has to be addressed when anybody is writing a particular user story in the backlog. First, the user story has to be independent. That means avoid putting dependent stories in the same sprint. Whatever task you are doing, it has to be very, very independent. It should not be like something is dependent on that, right? So that should not happen. Avoid writing a story that has and in it or break it down. You should not have and or something other words. You just say what you want in this particular story. That's it. Do not club it. Stories should try to solve a problem and the team should be trusted on that. It should have some values to the customers or the stakeholders. It should be estimatable. So when you are actually estimating it, it should have enough details. It should not be a vague story, right? It should have a estimate of the, you can actually be able to estimate that particular story, how big, how challenging, how much information is that in their story. It should be little small so that it can be accommodated in a single sprint, and which usually is in something like typically days, not a particular like whole sprint or maybe multiple sprints. It should be very precise. It should be testable. Basically, acceptance criteria stated in the customer terms should be able to be achieved in that particular part. So you have to make sure that it is independent, it is negotiable, it is valuable to the customer, it is estimatable, it is smaller in chunks, and it is testable. These are the principles which we need to follow when we are creating the story. But I have a better way of doing it. These are the story templates, ideally, how you should write a story, right? It is more about who, what, and why. As a person, right? If you see on the left hand side, I want to achieve something so that I get a value out of it. That's how it is. Who, what, why. So you have the person who wants to do it. You have a goal, what he wants to do, and what is the value if he does that, right? So as an agile team member, I want to have a template for writing user stories so that all our user stories can be consistent, right? So this is kind of a who, what, and why, right? Similarly, now the exercise is on your terms. Now, maybe if I am going to buy a house, I can say, as an fitness enthusiast, okay, I want to have a gym in my society so that I can work out and be fit, right? So I said that who I am. So I said, I did not say as Imran or as a person, right? I said a fitness enthusiast. So that adds a value that this person is very fitness freak. I want to. What do you want to? I want a gym in my society, or maybe I want some fitness campaigns in my society so that what is the value out of it? I can be fit. Or maybe I can be more a fitness freak or whatever. Similarly, this is a small exercise for everyone, like starting from Anand. Take any example. Take any example and just give me a user story. Just focus on who, what, and why. And this is how you will write a user story when you will start working on the Agile framework or Azure DevOps board. Okay. Any example, it could be anything. You want to eat ice cream, that's completely all right, but fine. Uh, Now, there is something called backlog definition of done, right? What is definition of done? I think I mentioned it when we were starting this conversation. As the team should have a common speaking language. The team should understand what do you mean when your item is complete, right? When you that, I've completed this item. What do you mean by that? As a developer, I might say that maybe I've done my coding, I've checked in the code, my work is done. But that's not the case. You need to, as a team, you need to decide, sit and sit with each other, decide a definition of done. For example, whether you merged, I'm giving you a technical details, so I'm not sure how relative it will be. Whether you merged your branch to the master branch, or whether it is a QA branch, did you do that first step? Did you test it for a few scenarios? Did you write the documentation? Did you added unit test cases? All these things can be created by the team and put it as a list. And once the person who has completed the task will have to go through that particular list and can just need to check few things. Okay, these are the things which I have done. That means my work item is done. Because definition of done can be anything for any person. Few person expects documentation. Few person might say, "Maine code kar diya, it's okay. That's it. I don't need anything." Right? So that has to be there in the team. I'll show you examples when we do Azure DevOps board, but this is just for the understanding. So that when somebody comes and say, okay, Nadeem has completed this work, that means he has also done the unit testing. He has also done the documentation. He has also done this. That's how he means to say that it is complete. Now coming back to the sizing, this is very, very important. Okay, sizing. How do you estimate the stories? How do you say that that story will take this much amount of time? So tell me, guys, how do you do it right now? So Nadeem or anybody PM gives you a requirement. How do you evaluate or estimate how much time will that take? Currently, like how do you do in your organization right now? So relative sizing of work should be done ahead of sprint planning. So when you are actually planning your sprint, the product owner can tweak or order the backlog, as we mentioned, right? He can add the backlog, whichever item is important. And the team will have enough information about how many stories they can take for the sprint. Before that, they need to mark it as well, right? They need to size it, that what should be the size of that particular thing. So we have like different sizing strategies. Anybody can use anything, whatever works for the team. Okay, there is no hard and fast rule. It is just a guideline. Now, if you see on the left hand side, I mean, I wanted to give you an example, but I think you understand the relative sizing well, because if I have to do that, right, I would draw a triangle, a circle, maybe a rectangle, or maybe you can take this, right? What is more difficult to draw? This a rectangle or square, or this t-shirt? That's a question. What is more
T-shirt
difficult?
is difficult.
Right? So you understand that you do not know how much time will be taken to draw this t-shirt, but you just understand that drawing this square or a rectangle is much easier than this particular t-shirt. So you will estimate this guy as small, or maybe the smallest item, and maybe this particular t-shirt would be more than that, like maybe medium or large. And similarly, if this t-shirt comes, it could be double XL or whatever. Some other shapes come into picture, maybe triangle, or not triangle, but maybe some other shape, octagon or something, then you might actually find it more difficult. Slowly, maybe a star pattern would be more difficult. So that's how you do a relative sizing, that this is the easiest one. So similarly, when we do sizing of the user stories, there are different methodologies. As you mentioned, t-shirt sizing, small, medium, and large, this your team is already doing, right? There is something called affinity size mass valuation as well, where you are actually doing based on XS, SML, all that. This is also kind of a small t-shirt sizing, but it is more about smaller items. But in smaller items also, you have extra smaller items, etc. But this is the most used technique, which is called planning poker. And planning poker, how does that work? Each team member is given. So if you go to planningpoker.com, there is a site also which helps you to estimate this, and it's fun. People who play cards, they love that. Each team member is given a set of cards with the numbers on them, and then a user item is picked up. The user story is picked up, and then we discussed that. So somebody reads that story very loudly. That as a this, I want to do blah blah blah, and every item, if there is not enough description, as a team we add that description in there, and then each member votes on the size, that what would be the size. For example, I say maybe three number. So usually it is a Fibonacci series: 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 20, 40. And this is just a relative sizing. Don't go by the number of days or number of hours. It has nothing to do with it. It's just like some people in some organizations, they treat it as hours or days, so that it is easier for them to track when they are actually creating some reports. That's it. Ideally, that should not be done, but still people do it. So, for example, if I say as a member of the team or as a developer or as a stakeholder, I want a login functionality, a social login functionality, so that people from other social logins can log into our website easily. Okay. So maybe and we'll discuss all the details. What are the methodology, social authentication which we need to add? For example, we'll just add Twitter and Facebook. These are the two things. Now the team will discuss with each other, and then everyone will share their cards, like a blank card, like not blank card, but hide their card, and they'll just open it up together. So once you open it up together, somebody might say, maybe I'll take 3 story points for this item. Somebody might say that I might take 13 story points, right? And it might differ from person to person perception as well as experience. A experienced person might say, I can take 8 days or 5 days, right? Oh, sorry, 5 story points. Don't go by days. Even I am bad with that. So 5 story points or 8 story points. And then the person who has given the lowest number or story point and the person who has given the maximum story point will have to discuss why they think that this work will is this particular story point. Like maybe somebody will say it's very easy, there are already libraries created and we can just hook into that library and then things can be done. The person who with 8 story points will say that hey, there are good things, but there are some authentication mechanism or token which we need to get it from some expert third party or some other tool which will take time. So all after all these consideration, the person who is running the sprint or planning poker will tell, okay, what is the consensus? Are you good with 8 or 3? And once the consensus is made that okay, based on these pointers, the story point should be 8 or 5 or 3, whatever the team decides, that particular story point is assigned to that particular user story. So that's how the relative sizing works. That's how the story points here works. So sizing means making sure what is the complexity of the user story or the task. So basically, you are just understanding what is the complexity. Story points helps us to understand or estimate that what could be or maybe how much time or how much efforts will it take to complete that particular story. Accordingly, we can plan the stories as well. So planning poker and what happens in planning poker. So each team is given a set of cards. I mean, you can have hard like the number cards which you have, or you can use virtual boards as well. The numbers are usually Fibonacci series. Fibonacci series is like 0, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, etc. Right? And each story is read aloud. People have to read it. Anybody, the person who is facilitating it, can read it. And each member votes on the size of the story, which he or she thinks. The lowest and the highest estimate explains why they chose their particular score, right? Why did they choose 1 or why did they choose 10? So that's how you understand like what is the complexity, discuss what are the different factors which made you think about that particular number, and then come to a consensus that okay, we all come to a consensus that this is the complexity of the story and this much effort in story points will be taken into consideration. Now again, t-shirt sizing. Now what happens when a team gets stuck or gets caught up in the idea of numbers and hours, and they want just like more effective system when they say we don't want numbers, we just want to understand the complexity, they can certainly go with this t-shirt sizing. And what happens with the affinity sizing and relative mass valuation? It's like when actually you have new teams with large backlog and they want to expedite the process, they just cut down that, okay, it's very small, medium, large, Excel. And then you might be thinking like, what shall we use it, right? Start with something smaller. Then you think, or maybe if you want to have a better estimate, understand, okay, will t-shirt size be a better fit for me? Or maybe affinity size will be better fit for me. Or maybe it might happen that you guys are so good that with planning poker, you are achieving your goals or targets well. So that's completely on the team. And that will come sprint by sprint. Maybe in first sprint, you might have some processes which you do not follow properly. Next sprint, you will try to adopt few things which you have missed in the previous sprint. Slowly, your estimation techniques with using estimation techniques as well as estimates will start improving. Maybe in some sprints you might overestimate, in some sprints you might underestimate, etc., etc. Right? So that might certainly happen. Whatever we do, we just make sure that it is consistent through the sizing efforts. We just need to make sure that we have a standard of the sizing efforts, and then we are now let's come to ordering, and I think we are almost there to cover things. So ordering. Answer the question: if you could have only one of the remaining, which one would it be? Right. So this was for the product owner. When we were discussing that story. if you have to do only one thing in that sprint, what it would be, right? So based on to different consideration, how you are, how that work item is or story is aligned to the vision, what is the value of the story, what is the impact, what is the cost associated, all these complexity, etc. You estimate that or order that particular item. Make sure that the important, most important item is on the top, least important item is on the bottom. You also sometimes reprioritize things that, okay, this is more important, because sometimes, so as per market situations or as per client expectations, things can change. So you will reorder things. You'll put things in top and then you'll put few things in bottom. So that might happen. But when you are ordering things, that is the only one question. On the top, it will have only one thing. If you could have only one remaining thing, what it would be? So that will go on the top. Then go out of the numbers of items right now in the bucket, what would be the most important thing? So on, you will estimate that, order that particular backlog. Let's come to ordering. So what is ordering, right? What it would be. So that is the kind of ordering or the definition of ordering. Ordering takes into account of what is the vision, what is the value of that particular story, what will be the impact of the story. Like it's as good as this, like to be in a layman language. Don't get into the technicalities. It's more about what is the most important thing right now. I would just want to do that first, and rest everything will go back. So maybe if I took one item, it went on the top. I got one more item in the story in the backlog, and then I realized, hey, this is more important than the one which is on the top. I will remove that item and I'll reprioritize that item and I'll put it on top of it. Maybe there is something which you feel, okay, this is, maybe this can go like in the lower buckets where you do not need this to be done right now. You can certainly put it down. So, and this process of ordering, backlog refining is a continuous process. Like your product owner continuously groom the backlog. That is called backlog grooming. And that's a continuous process. It's not needed that he'll have a specific meeting, because he is the customer facing person. He knows what is important and what is priority. And he can certainly prioritize and deprioritize things. Now, don't get confused between the product backlog and the sprint backlog. Okay, those are two different things. We'll come to sprint backlog because this thing is done on product backlog right now, right? The big mountain of work which you have, the main works. Coming to the sprint planning or sprint backlog. So there is a meeting called sprint planning. So there was a product backlog which we spoke about, right? What is sprint backlog? Sprint backlog is the backlog or the work items which we have chosen to run in that particular sprint. For example, we say that maybe 10 items or maybe 10 story points will be covered or will be completed in that sprint. So when we create that backlog, those items which have been picked up from the product backlog, right? Those are called sprint backlog, right? So we have seen how important the planning is so far. The importance has not stopped because we will see a lot of things being developed. We need to understand what work the team will accomplish next. So that part comes into the picture of sprint back stream. Coming back to the sprint planning, right? So this is this whole sprint planning diagram which we had already seen. Priority, right? So if you see backlog, ranked list of work, which is like ordered list of work, which is done by product owner. Now we do a sprint backlog or sprint planning, where the outcome is the outcome of the sprint planning meeting or ceremony. We call it ceremony or a meeting, is the sprint backlog. What does the team do there? They select stories fitting in the sprint. Okay. They just take few stories, then they estimate it that what would be the story point. Maybe the planning poker would be played here. And then they break those stories into tasks, because the stories could be anything. You have to break it down into smaller pieces of achievable tasks, which you can measure later. And then the same thing which has been created out of that meeting would be sprint backlog. And this is the items which the team will be working during that sprint or iteration. Okay. That's how this, so when this part is going on, the sprint is going on, this is the main source of work stream. This is the place where the team will pick up the stories and will start working on that. Clear? Sprint planning, sprint backlog. Sprint planning meeting is nothing but creating a sprint backlog out of the stories which are more important in the product backlog, which is the major chunk of code, major chunk of work items. Take it that, decide that these are the stories as per the product owner which are on the top, which are important. And then you break it down into tasks. And then that particular backlog is known as sprint backlog. Okay, so again, sprint planning, sprint backlog. Sprint backlog created during sprint planning. What are the creation activities? Stories selected. So if you see product backlog, we select few stories which are important. Those stories are put in a thing called sprint backlog. Those are the items which have been used in that particular sprint or the source of work in that particular sprint. And those items or stories are broken down into tasks and then they are estimated, right? So tasks are estimated. How much time will this particular task will take? Maybe hours or maybe days, etc. And how much story point that particular backlog item has. So accordingly, those will be broken down into tasks. Now, breaking down of tasks. This is a kind of breaking down of a story into tasks. So if you see, as a customer, so this is what a planning looks like. So I have few stories. Maybe my team has created few stories in the backlog, and we have already have it. Now that particular user story has to be split up into or broken down into tasks. So if you see as a customer, I want to be able to save product in my wish list so that I can purchase item for it. And then again, there is a kind of similar kind of stories. That might happen, right? You can find duplicate stories or you might have similar stuff. But the essence is like, if you want to achieve this, you need to break down. First, maybe put a add to wish list button on each product page. Create a new DB to store wish list item, or maybe create a new table, whatever. Create page to display the user's wish list. Add a view wish list link to the homepage, right? So these are the stories. So this the team will decide because the person when we will be discussing what are the things which are needed. Maybe I considered only two items and I gave an estimate of like maybe three. But then Nadeem says that hey, I will take 5 days, 5 story points. See, even I'm saying days, 5 story points. And then what happens? Then Nadeem will say, you know what? Even we have to create a page to display users' wish list. And then I'll say, oh yeah, I did not consider that. And that's how you come to a consensus. So this is the process, right? Because you have some items in your head that okay, for achieving this particular user story, maybe I need to do these tasks. But the other person might have also something which is important or which you have missed. Or maybe there is something which Nadeem has suggested that view wishlist link to homepage. And I might say, this is already created or this is already there in the particular product. And then you might say, okay, then I will come down to my estimates. And then maybe Nadeem will say, I'll lower my estimates. So that's how this particular thing works. This is how example of story which has been broken down into tasks. And this you will be doing it today. So you will be. So in fact, I would say right now just focus on these things, but I'll give you some time to create user stories for a scenario, and then you'll have to do all these things: sprint planning, break down the stories, all these things. This is also an important term called velocity. Okay. Now, velocity in Agile is a simple calculation measuring units of work completed in a given time frame. Units of work can be measured in several ways, including engineering hours, user story points, or user stories or story points. Now, if you see in the product backlog, there are something which are called user stories. So each item has been marked as a user story, like 8 user story points, 5 user story points, etc., etc. In your sprint backlog, you might have taken 5 items, right? And when you actually do the backlog planning or sprint planning, you make sure that once those tasks are broken down, once you have estimated the story points, 8553, the total number of story points which you have taken into consideration for that particular sprint is the estimated velocity of your particular sprint, right? So that is the estimated amount of work which you have taken into consideration for this particular iteration, right? And when you end the sprint, it might be, I think last time somebody asked me a question, right? Okay, what happens if we are not able to achieve it? Yes, that might have happened that you are not able to achieve it. There are few things which did not get even started. So that will certainly go in the next sprint. Or if you have already completed all those items, you can pull new items from the product backlog. Maybe. So if you have completed something, you still have points, you can still get some new items from the product backlog, which fits in your sprint. So if you see the actual velocity points is 18 here and the estimated velocity point is 26. That means when you started the sprint, you had this much amount of work on your plate, but your team was able to achieve only 18 points of velocity work or 18 story points. This was your velocity of completion of the sprint of that particular sprint. And you need to make sure that you increase this velocity, like as a standard practice. How can my team increase this velocity? How can we deliver more? How can we, this will also give you an estimate that did we overestimate, or did we overestimated things, or did we underestimate things, right? So here, if you see, we think we have underestimated because we still had 8 story points, which is like still pending from the sprint, which we assumed that will be completed, or we, right? So when you start the sprint, you need to understand what is the velocity, how many people are there, right? How many people can do what kind of work, etc. And there are tools associated with it. When we'll do as Azure DevOps boards, we'll understand how we do capacity management of people with respect to velocity. It should not be the case that you estimate 26 points, you have a velocity of 50 points. Maybe your team is actually capable of delivering 50 points, but people are sitting idle, right? Now, I was talking about the task, right? So if you see all these things, 455 hours, these are the tasks which you have broken down into, and you have estimated the number of hours which might be taken. And these are something which is, you can actually have different activities by development, testing. These are buckets, like you can actually label. How can we? So sometimes we do labeling, right? So development team, maybe a story point, you can label it as a development activity, and then it will show up here. And this is a Azure DevOps boards, what do you call, page. I'm just, Jira also has, our testing team might have this much capacity, out of which you have assigned 139.5 hours of work to the testing team. And if you see here, work assignment, Afsar Ali or whoever XYZ person is, he's having a capacity of 72 hours in that sprint. But he has been given a task which was estimated for 76 hours, maybe multiple tasks, right? Which compile and which combine together and create 76 hours of work. And maybe you have somebody who has 32 hours, so 36 hours of capacity, but that person has been only assigned 32 hours of work. So similarly, you can see that on the tool, you can, ask people to, change roles, or maybe change work items, or make them make sure that nobody's getting overburdened on that. So, and this is a tool specific, that has nothing to do with this agile training or scrum training. I just showed it to you because this is something which people expect, that what do we do when we do things in practical. So this has nothing to do. I just wanted to give a picture about how the work capacity management looks like when people or the scrum teams is doing capacity. And here in this board, there is wonderful features. When we'll do the Azure DevOps board training, then we'll see wonderful features that if there are people who are on leave, right, they know PTO, planned leaves. They can tell, okay, I'm off on this particular day. So we can just put it in the tool that maybe this person or this team member is on this week. So automatically the capacity of that person will be, if there is a national holiday which is coming up, you can put that particular stuff, and automatically everybody's capacity will be reduced by 8 working hours, or whatever number of hours they work. Okay. Anyways, yeah. So this was something where we actually, when we started with Scrum trainings or maybe Scrum, this is how we used to track things, like initially. If we would have done the same thing when person in your office, we would have actually stuck these post-it notes on your boards and would have like moved stories. But right now we have to do things virtually. So today we'll be playing a virtual game, and we'll use all virtual tools to do things that will try to make life easier and have fun. But anyways, also, there is something called product backlog refinement. I spoke about it in the previous session, that this is something which is an ongoing effort. Maybe the product owner has got some inputs from the stakeholders, which make sure that this item is more important. Okay. Then, reprioritize it, put it on the top. And this is product backlog. Don't get confused. This is the product backlog, the main source of work items. Who's accountable? Product owner. Again, ongoing activity, no meeting needed, nothing. Whoever is the product owner of your team will get the requirements from the customer. If it is important, it will go on top. It might happen that there is something which they decided to do in December, or maybe some few other sprints. They will. It is important right now for some reasons. Then this will go on the top, and this will be refined continuously by the product owner. This activity is called product backlog refinement. Again, done by product owner, ongoing activity. Now, this is a typical sprint. So we already know what is sprint because we discussed it prior to this, but still, it is a time boxed iteration or development cycle. Time box means you have decided the time. It could be 1 week, it could be 2 weeks, 3, 4 weeks. Let's not make it more than 4 weeks, otherwise, then it becomes typical waterfall model, right? Because then what happens? You're actually delivering it after a long time. And then things might have changed, a lot of changes might have come. Things you do not get the stakeholders involved very quickly, so that you do not get prior feedback. So that is a problem. You experiment, learn, pivot, produce a potentially shippable product. Now, I think we discussed in the previous slides what is being delivered is being delivered to the production. It's not important that it is delivered to the production or it is deployed to the production, but it should be ready or it should be in such a state that if somebody asks that I want this particular feature, it should be ready to be deployed to production. Okay, that should be completed from your side. What happens in this particular sprint? If you see 1 to 4 week of sprint, you have a daily stand up or daily scrum every 24 hours. It's been prescribed that it happens at the same place at the same time. Any time would be good, whether it is morning, evening. And you have to answer a few questions in that daily stand up. We'll come to that. I think we have a slide on that as well. Next, maybe then there is a sprint review. Once you are ready with the completed, potentially shippable product, at the end of the sprint, you meet together, you show a demo, you showcase a demo, whatever you have completed, you show it to the stakeholders, you show it to the team. The people can come and participate and see what exactly has to be, what has been completed and what has been delivered. They can give feedback as well. There might be something, they might say that, oh, this is not what I expected. Maybe the user story did not have sufficient information or incorrect information. I wanted a color blue, you did for yellow. And then you might say that, and that's how the user story comes into picture, right? That was not clear in the user story that you wanted yellow or maybe you wanted blue, right? I thought that you just wanted a colorful paint. I put yellow color as because that's my favorite. But the client wanted blue, but he did not convey that in the user story. And that's why we say whenever we do the user story, we need to make sure that what, why, who, what, why is being conveyed specifically. I do not want to eat I want to eat a non-veg food rather than better it is in such a way. I want to eat some chicken tandoori, right? So that the client or the team knows that, okay, this is what I have to deliver to the client. If I give them maybe shawarma, he will not be happy, right? Because he had the different intention of that particular shippable product. So that's how this sprint works. Daily stand up, it is a part of the sprint. Even though we do daily stand-ups, even though we do go through this training, still people might find that people are questioning you or what did you not do? Why did you not do? Why is not a question. It's more about what did you do since our last meeting to help the team get the sprint goal, right? When we are focusing on a common goal, how did you contribute since yesterday? What are you going to contribute or what am I going to do next to help the team reach the sprint goal, right? So what did I do since last time we met? What I'm planning to do today? And do I see anything that will be inhibiting the team from reaching the sprint goal? So it's as good as this. What did I do today? What I'm planning to do tomorrow? Wherever it might happen, yeah, it might you might have your sprint in the Scrum meeting in the morning. Then you can say, what did I do yesterday? What I'm planning to do today? And there are no roadblocks, or there are roadblocks which I am finding issues or difficulties in. Maybe the Scrum Master will facilitate that particular stuff. Maybe he might say that, hey, you're getting problems in performance SQL queries. Why don't you go to Dilip? He has better understanding. So he will connect that person to Dilip after the scrum. So usually daily stand-ups should be within 15 minutes because we are not giving specific updates. There might be chances that you might say, hey team, I did not do anything since our last meeting to help the team, or I did not work on the sprint. As simple as this. I do not have any updates. I did not work on the sprint. And that's a very genuine and factual thing, right? I was working on some other priority item, but I did not contribute anything to the sprint goal. You can certainly say that. So many times what people say, they try to just make it up that, okay, no, I was actually working on the same item. No, it's completely all right. And you might get, distracted. You might be doing some social club activity. You might be away for that and you did not contribute well. I know we actually overwork to make sure that we are contributing and we are doing things, but that should not be the case. If you are occupied, you could not do work, just don't lie. Just say that, okay, I did not do anything to contribute to our sprint goal or to anything. So the crux is, what did I do yesterday or today? What I'm planning to do today or tomorrow? I'm just taking you two scenarios whenever you have your Scrum meetings. And is there any roadblock? If there are no roadblocks, that's how I give updates. So if I have to give update, I will say, okay, I was working on this particular story. I completed this particular part. I have created the database. I have created the table. Things look good. Tomorrow, I'm going to create the store procedures. Tomorrow, I'm going to maybe write some hooks. And then I do not see any roadblocks. Maybe the UI team might say that Yesterday I created a UI page for the homepage. Today I'm planning to create the UI page for XYZ page. And I have a roadblock. I have something which I needs to be decided by maybe the product team or product manager or anyway, product owner, right? So you can just put it as a blocker. That's why my product is engine. And this blocker, this particular, the third thing, right? This is something which the Scrum Master has to take care into consideration, that the Scrum Master of the team has to make sure that what are the roadblocks of this particular item. He'll take a note of it. And once the meeting is over, that Scrum Master will just help that team member to remove that roadblocks or to remove that impediment. That's the role of Scrum Master. He is not your kind of manager. He is just a servant leader who's helping you to achieve your goals, remove roadblocks, etc., and to facilitate the meeting. He will plan the daily sprint meeting. He will put the calendar invites. He will put the sprint review meetings. He will put the sprint retrospective. You have not come to retrospective yet, but those are the different ceremonies which he will put a meeting of. He will make sure that people join. He will make sure that the culture has been adopted. People are aware of agile. People know what is agile, etc. That is responsibility of Scrum Master, nothing else. He can also be a part of your team and do work. Okay. He can also give updates that this is what I did yesterday, this is what I am planning to do today, etc. But if people want to leave, just don't make them sit for solving problems because they might have other things or valuable things to do, right? Just because
That's
we
how
are
it is.
discussing,
It's a
yeah,
small,
because what happens at
small team, and I want every PM to contribute to the issues and even designers to
no.
every issue.
Question is you want. That should not be the case. It should not be the case you want. The team or the PM should want to be a part of the meeting. See, that's the reason we are going through all these trainings. The training is to make sure that is the awareness of what has to be done. Now you do it, you don't do it, then it becomes your part. But this is to make a culture out of it. You have to make sure that you got updates, you got the roadblocks, 15 minutes done, right? Do not ask anybody to stay unless it is needed or unless that person wants to stay and help you. Now, coming back to the question that what usually happens, I'll tell you. I gave my update and then I have a roadblock, and then the whole team starts solving that roadblock in the meeting, right? What happens? There are two other developers who have no roadblocks, who cannot contribute to my roadblock, but still they are part of the meeting and we are wasting human hours, right? We are actually wasting human hours. Maybe your case is different. I'm just giving you a simple scenario. That's how it happens. Maybe we are a team of 8 or 9 people and everybody gives their update. For everybody, you take like 10 minutes for solving their roadblocks and just see, you actually spend up 90 minutes, right? So it's actually something which is like, okay, 1.5 hours of work, which would have been delivered much deliberately or efficiently in a different way, where you could actually, what do you call, taken the update, written the roadblocks. And if somebody, because team is also right, if I know something, if I can help the team, I would suddenly say, hey, you know what, go to this particular document. I have already listed it down, or maybe go to this particular website, or this is the solution for it. He can stay for that meeting, give the active feedback only after 15 minutes. I have seen teams, like even I was a part of the team, where we have seen that people, how do people actually do it? They have a timer that you get only 1 minute or 90 seconds for your updates. That's it. If that 90 seconds is over, then you do not get your chance. Then what happens? The whole team shifts to the last hour, like after 15 minutes, the whole team, whoever did not get chance or want to speak about that particular stuff, uh, is being asked to speak up, and rest everybody who do not want to stay for the meeting has to like just leave, because we need to value time of others. That's very important. But it will just be a cultural change. You will achieve the same thing, right? You will ask them the roadblocks. Once you're done with the sprint, everyone is done. Okay, cool. Now we are trying to solve this problem. If you want to stay, stay. If you do not want to stay, but yes, you can ask for help also. But that should not be an order. You can certainly say XYZ person that, hey, we want your expertise. Can you please stay for a while? Okay. So that is just a culture. I know that's what I said. Everybody does this daily stand up in their organization, knowingly, unknowingly. But there are some kind of ethics and cultural changes which we need to adopt. Sprint review. So sprint review is the demo, right? So I think this is self-explanatory. You always know that whatever you have like completed, you have to showcase it to the team. I don't know if you guys are doing this right now, but whatever. You just take feedback from the stakeholders, from
Call it a
team.
handover.
You can say the handover meeting in your case that, okay, this is it. And then they might give you feedback. Feedback could be in terms of bugs. Feedback could be in terms of improvement, right? That this was expected. And those items will be taken as consideration as an action item. And you will put that action items into the next sprint. Maybe the customer said, as I mentioned, I wanted yellow color, you have painted it blue. So you will just add a new story in the next sprint saying the XYZ background color should be yellow, right? That will be a story point in your next sprint because that was given you as a feedback from the customer. So this is one of the ceremony or meeting sprint review. And by the way, there is no specific duration. You can certainly how much kind of items you have to demonstrate. Accordingly, you can decide the meeting time. Retrospectives. This is very, very important. Okay, this is the whole what do you call it? Discussion where you actually understand and say the purpose of your retrospective is to have the team members provide feedback to the team. Like your team members will be providing feedback. As somebody mentioned, the QA team did not estimated the story points correctly. They estimated it two, but it was an eight story points or maybe more than that. So next time, QA team, please be cautious about it. And please don't use a blame game. Okay. Maybe the QA team can itself say, we did not estimated it well. Maybe we'll have to improve on that. We'll also talk about something called, so this is something how we do this retrospective and we'll do it today. What shall we start doing? What should we start doing, right, to make our team better or sprint goal better? What should we stop doing? Maybe we are spending too much time in stand up. Let's wait. Let's stop that stand-up meeting. Let's limit it to 15 minutes. Or maybe we are actually doing too much of discussion meetings. Can somebody, stop those discussion meetings so that we get more action? Or maybe anything. Or maybe we should stop using a tool. Anything which you should stop doing, which you found that was not beneficial for your sprint. What should you continue? Like we are using Azure DevOps board, and this is a very good tool. We should continue doing it. Maybe we created a standard where we actually created a meeting or anything discussion which was beneficial for the team. Anything which you feel you should continue doing and which you had done in this sprint. Maybe it could be a tool, it could be a process, it could be a thing, right? Maybe you should say that the team should help each other. We should continually do that. You can also do kudos and celebrations where you say, "Ki, hey, finally we delivered this particular project." Or maybe, hey, Jeevan, you did a fabulous job of managing this. Or maybe, Sherlock, you did a excellent job of deploying or maybe, delivering this particular thing in a very short time of period, whatever. I mean, this was the stakeholders were really happy, etc., etc. So it is all about this. You can do it manually on the page. You can do it on a board. You can. There are different tools available. I'll show you one today. You can use that, or maybe you can have a better tool to do that. Okay. I think Trello also has something to do this, but I have a different tool. Okay, this is what I've created a slide simply to make sure that what are we doing. So today, what we'll be doing as a ceremony would be sprint planning. We'll have a product backlog. I would ask you guys to create a product backlog. Okay. So you will take any scenario. Any scenario. Let's not make it technical. Okay. Because if we make it technical, then everybody goes into their own zones. Let's make it any scenario. Maybe you want to create a housing complex. Maybe you want to create a amusement park, etc. Anything, because that's how people will think out of the box. Then backlog grooming. Maybe the product owner who we will choose as a product owner will start grooming the backlog based on what's important and what's not. And that he will be doing throughout the sprint and whenever he needs. Then sprint iteration. We will do a complete sprint where people will work on few items. They will do a daily scrum today. They will give their updates. What did they do? And then we will do a sprint review where they will showcase it to the customer and the customer might give their feedback. And then we will do a sprint retrospective where the team will say what went well, what did not go well, and what we should continue doing, etc. Okay. So this is how we are gonna do things today. So this is the game of Scrum. Now reiterating it, we will choose a product owner, we will choose a Scrum Master, and we will choose dev team or the Scrum team will be working on the item. A product owner will be like responsible for the product backlog, getting the requirements from stakeholders and doing all the things. The team will discuss and do the sprint planning, and they will create stories, and then those stories will be broken down into tasks. Once that has been done, we will start your sprint. Everybody will start working on the stories. Every day, we will have a daily stand up. So maybe we'll have one iteration of daily stand up so that we understand how it works, and then we'll not do every day. And then we'll do sprint review where we will have stakeholders like everyone who is in the meeting will be a stakeholder, and anybody can showcase any crap. We will give their feedback on that. And then we will also have a sprint retrospective that how did the team do on a board. So we'll have fun today. I hope. Now, this is more about talking to Scrum and Scrum team. And let's take a scenario. What scenario you want to take? You want to build an amusement park? You want to build a housing complex, etc. I don't want technical things. That's what I'm saying. Then people do not think. Then they have their own perception, right? And then the learning which we want to have will be disrupted. That's the reason. Renovating a home. So let's see. That's our epic, or that's the vision of the team. Vision. Okay, that's when we'll talk about the Azure DevOps board, we'll talk about epics, features, and stories, etc. But anyways, that's a vision that you want to renovate your office. You want to renovate. That is the vision. Create user stories based on what would you like to do. Let's have 2, 3 stories, and then we'll move. That's okay. Now, what happens? You are actually working on the sprint planning, and as a team, you have come here to make sure that we take items which we can actually put it on the visual board or in the sprint backlog. So now tell me, first, what will you do? You will actually see how much velocity you can achieve. We will actually first prioritize the story points, right? And then once the story point prioritization is done, we will break them into pieces. This is a planning poker tool which I am adding your stories to, right? So if you see, it's very easy to add stories. Okay, we have one story and let's add one more story to discuss because let's take these 2 stories and do it. Okay, actually, I should hide that, but anyways, let me share this link to other people as well, right? So I'm sharing this link. Anybody can open it and get into it as a guest user. People can come and let me know if everybody has been ready for that particular story. Okay, again, a disclaimer. You can use any planning poker tool or you can use your physical cards as well. I've just used this for demoing you the stuff. Okay, so now based on this story, so we are discussing this particular story. And so again, I'll read it out loudly so that you understand it, what it is. You think about how much effort or velocity you feel it should have. You also tell me about the story points it should have and why you feel it should have. Again, while following the standards, what we'll do, we'll ask everyone to vote on the story. And once they have already voted, we will flip the cards and then we will make sure whoever has voted the least number of points, we will ask them that why do they think that this particular item should take that much time. And whoever has points to voted for the maximum number of points will ask that person as well. Okay, so as an office admin, I would like to replace the chairs in the office, the ones which has good lumbar support, so that when the employees come back, they feel comfortable. Okay. Now, you can also discuss about what are the things which this particular item needs. So if you need a chair, you might have to, raise a requisition. That would take some time. You might have to open it to request a quotes from different vendor. That would be one thing. These are the 2 things which I feel. What about the team? What do you guys feel? Or you already voted? You can certainly. So these are the 2 points which I mentioned as a facilitator. You can certainly vote based on your understanding, and then we'll discuss that particular stuff. From these stories, that's what I understood. You can start. I would vote at the last. Actually, I should hide this screen, but then it won't come in the recording. So let's keep it as this. And this is complexity. This is not number of days. Okay, by the way, this also has question mark and pass items. So maybe you are from a different team or different area, which you do not have no clue, like what is this gonna take, right? I've never done this kind of work. So you can say pass because you do not have any say in this, or you can also say question marks if you have questions. I think people have voted. I'll vote myself as well, or maybe I'll just move the flip card. Very good. So Sajid says that I do not know anything much about this item. So I would say I would take a pass and I would have a coffee. So I say that I see that Dhananjay has voted as 3 story points. John Smith has voted 8 story points. So Dhananjay, would you like to say why do you think it will take 3 story points? If you have to talk about 3 pointers, which makes you, or maybe 1 pointer, whatever makes you, what are the things which you would like to prioritize here, or maybe talk about here? Let's go to Smith. Who's Smith here? So can you please tell me why it will take 8 story points? Why do you feel it will take 8 story points? Why, how complex it is for you? But now the team, as a collective team, you need to decide and go on a consensus of this. Would somebody like to do this again? Uh, would, you know, you want to do it again, and, based on your understanding, what you guys feel, you can discuss, and we will redo it. Till the time we do reach a consensus, we will reset and we'll redo it. Okay. What about others? Because I'm gonna flip it. We'll redo the votes again on it. That's also could be one of the things where you are actually getting rid of old chairs. I mean, this can come into negotiation as well. You can actually sell it to the vendor back, saying that you can take it, or maybe you can, yes, but it will also take some time, maybe some resource, few hours, few minutes, whatever, right? So now, taking on these stories, let's decide what is important so that I can cut it off. Or let's do one thing, let's not cut it off. Based on those things, what do you feel? I will reset. Let's revote it. How many story points you feel? Because we have to come to a consensus. We have to come where everyone says, okay, we agree to this. We agree as a team that this will be this much complexity based on the questions. Although still the question remains the same. What do you want to do? Physical or, because your estimates will go up and down based on that. And then you need to understand the requirement. This, by the way, it doesn't usually take this much time. Okay. This is for the first time we are doing. We need to understand this, what we are doing, what are the different scenarios, so that we are actually spending too much time on one story. Perfect. Let's flip the card. Perfect. And in this case also, it might have happened that somebody says 3 and somebody says 5 or somebody says 8. But then we'll have to make sure that if the team says it is 5, then we will just add it as a 5 story points. So now the velocity is 5 right now. If you see, we have for this sprint, we have chosen 5 story points for this particular story. And now we will move to the next story. As an IT admin, I would like to change the cable around the desk so that we can make it more organized. Okay. So that's the story. As an IT admin, I play a role of IT admin, and I would like to change the cabling around. It's very messy on the desk, and it's very unorganized. And I want to make it organized with some tooling or with some different kind of cabling. So I want to do that. Let me put this story on the. Oops, here it is, right. You guys can vote, but before that, we can discuss what are things needed as well. But let's vote it. You guys vote, and then we'll talk about what are the things which are needed here. Yeah, so this is, I would certainly say this is also a great example where one is individual says that, okay, it's just about buying the cables and fitting it. But the other individual says that, you know what, you have missed these pointers, which might take, because these are real scenarios. And there might also happen, by the way, that you might also skip that particular part, that sometimes you don't come up with that particular item here in the meeting sprint planning, but later on you have an item where you say, oh, we forgot to get the budget approval as a part of this particular story, or maybe it will take a day or half a day, whatever. So you can add it in the sprint later. Never mind. So basically, these are the backlog, these are the tasks associated with it, right? Now we are actually running the Scrum. So maybe in the Scrum or in the sprint, somebody has taken some job. Maybe this particular item has been taken by Sherlock. Maybe this particular item has been taken by Nadeem, etc., etc. Everybody has picked up their items to start working on, right, on tasks, and they have started working on. And now we come on the first day of our Scrum meeting, right? So in the daily stand up, let's talk about. So I would give you one task, and which you just have to speak about what did you do today, what did you do yesterday, what are you planning to do tomorrow, and if there are any roadblocks. So the team has to itself take the items, pick the task. Okay, I'm just in the interest of time, I'm just taking it an example, and I'm assuming that you have picked up this task and you are working on it, and we are doing a daily scrum. So when you come in the scrum meeting, you will just say, hey team, everything is going well. Today we are here to talk about what did you do, right? So what did you do yesterday? What are you planning to do today? And if there are any roadblocks, that's what you would start with. And then others will start with his maybe anybody, any individual will start with his updates. So Scrum Master has taken a note on his plate. That's it. He will move ahead. He'll not try solving that problem right now in the Scrum meeting. We have completed kind of one item has been remaining for someone so and so reason. Maybe somebody's absent, somebody was not able to do it, some vendor delayed, maybe the new design of spaces was not ready, maybe the finalization of who will design the spaces was not ready, right? So we will actually showcase the demo. Now, this demo would consist of only one feature. Why? because your team has only achieved X number of items in that particular sprint backlog. This is still incomplete. You cannot show it. So this will stay as it is, and you will have a sprint backlog meeting. What I'll do is I would like anybody to and draw any diagram where you can show how your office looks like. Okay, but that would not be fun. That would not be fun. Let's take any paint or application, open any paint application and try to draw something. You're actually giving a demo to the customer, okay, how the chair will look like in the office space. So you have to draw something, right? Okay, I think,
Okay.
okay, these are the chairs. Cool. So this is the placement, this is the chair, this is how the chairs are looking like. You can just speak about it, can turn 360 degrees. You can lean on it. So just describe the chairs, how good it is, how efficient it is. Just describe your product which you have delivered. Okay, great. So Nadine, you as a stakeholder has posted this requirement, right? So what do you feel? Is this what you expected? Cool. Also, the product owner also can say, or the Scrum Master can say that, you know what? Yes, maybe it did not have, but yes, it has. But ideally, this was not conveyed when the user story was being passed to us, right? Because we are very specific to a user story. This, if this is a kind of requirement, it should be certainly should have been given prior to the development efforts, right? It should have been given. Like we also want a label or place to keep a label where we can share which employee uses this chair or which chair belongs to which employee, etc. Okay, so that is also because sometimes clients say, okay, this is expected, but if this is expected, was it very clear in the story? So that's why precise stories are always needed. Although luckily the chair was having good features, which it contained what the client needed or maybe the stakeholder needed. What is the action item? What the stakeholder would like to do? Because that would be the action item of the sprint review. Whatever changes are needed, which would be the action items in the sprint review. And those action items, once we create that, will be part of the next sprint. We'll go to the product backlog and will be a part of the next sprint backlog. So this is what the action item after the sprint review, which will be concluding. So we created our product backlog, we did our sprint backlog, we did sprint planning, we created our sprint backlog, we worked on the what do you call it? Sorry, we have our product backlog, we did planning, we created a sprint backlog, we worked on the sprint backlog, out of which there was a sprint review, and out of the sprint review we had a action items that this is something which can be done. Now the product, this will actually after this, so this is an item which has been in a sprint action, sprint review action, but this will finally go into product backlog. And then when we are prioritizing, the product owner, he will decide that whether it should be in this next sprint or it should be into next to next sprint, whatever, which item is important, because he will continuously go here. Maybe the client is like, hey, stakeholder, no, I want my money, that is more priority, so please sell the cushion first, right? So it will go up and down based on that, and accordingly it will be pulled into the next sprint. Now, after doing that sprint review, now it's time for our team to do a retrospective to understand where are we doing things right. So we have done the sprint review. Now comes with the team retrospective. So let me go to the slides first so that I give you just again where the retrospective comes into picture. Okay, so this is the part. We have done the sprint review. We had our product. We did a sprint review. We got a feedback. We are doing sprint retrospective. This retrospective is within the team. The purpose of retrospective is to have the team members provide feedback to the team. So a feedback from the team to the team, so that once the feedback is being created, it will be put in the product backlog if needed, or the team will take care of it in terms of process, culture, tools, etc. Anything. So that will be done. And how do we do it? We do it through this. We have a board where we talk about what should we start doing, what should we stop doing, what should we continue doing, and then we can celebrate something. Okay, so let's go to the last edge of this part, which is retrospective. Again, there are different tools available. Okay, can I move this here? Okay, yeah. There are different tools available which we can use for retrospective. I'm using a tool called retro.app. Okay. If you see, I have something which is start, stop, and delete. Start, stop, and continue, and celebration column. You can add it your columns as well. I think if you go in action, edit board, there are different templates available. What are the different teams needed? So I've just added these items. Okay. And I will share this link with you. Share the board items. Right. This is the link. Again, We'll make it as a public board. I will share it with you. Everyone will see the same on their screen, and then they can vote and talk about it. Right? You can keep it as sometime anonymous as well, where you do not want people to know who has commented what. Because sometimes what happens, people, so make me anonymous. There are different board settings. I think it's for the paid version as well. But sometimes what happens, people are reluctant to speak the truth. Maybe somebody wants to tell something, but they are very scared, like, okay, what the other team or what the other team member will think about me. So sometimes we do it as, but as a Scrum Master, you need to take care of these questions to be answered. So we'll start from start doing. So what the team thinks we should start doing in order to improve and contribute more towards us. Anybody can write anything on this particular board. If you can start writing anything, just think about it. So we are discussing this part, right? What do you think we should start doing? Shall we start doing a different process? Shall we start doing a different, using a different tool? Shall we be, better with something else? What shall we do? Anything. Because you went through a sprint, you understood there are few good things, there are few bad things, right? Maybe you could not complete this particular item because of some reasons. New design of spaces. Why do you think new design of spaces was not completed? You can certainly put that, and you can add that particular item here. Can do better velocity management. Okay. People can vote it also, by the way, to make sure that it's been heard of, like how many people, align with this particular thing. Because this is very important. This will also create action items for your sprint in the for the improvements. Okay. Anybody else? Start writing anything. Just see anything which you feel. See, this is the reason I did not take a technical solution. You know why? Because then everybody, uses their pretty old techniques and other things rather than use your techniques here in something which is like non-technical, where you have to think because you have not done that. And that's what agile is, right? Doing complex, uncertain problems. Okay. We should start doing by detailed planning and designing before starting. A very good point. Maybe the stories should be well self-contained. The design document should be ready, or it could be a part of the sprint also, by the way, where you can say designing the XYZ solution of planning for this. If it goes, okay, it's stuck. By the way, think I can. I'll put kudos and celebrations here. So thank you very much, Sherlock, for appreciating Dhananjay for a great job that he did in the sprint. Yeah. But we are actually focusing on this part. So let's not do kudos right now. So let's think about start doing. One more point, then we'll move to what we should stop doing. DJ also has start using new vendor management tool. Very good. Very, very good. I think we came here so the team thought that the vendor management tool was having a problem or something like that, and this was a suggestion. And don't worry, it could be a good positive suggestion, negative is never there. It's always improvement, right? So it could be. So yes, we'll think about it. Very good. Let's what shall we stop doing in sprints in order to work towards the sprint goal and perform better and create good products as well as achieve our sprint goals effectively. What shall we stop doing? Less meetings, right? That could be one of the things. We can have less meetings. We can maybe stop using Slack and start using Teams. That could also be something which is effective. Anything.
Using
Okay.
multiple
Stop relying on
communication.
vendor. Absolutely. Very good. Stop relying on one vendor entirely. Good, because they create roadblocks. Sometimes they are busy, they are occupied. We do not get the output from them, and then our work is hampered. Anything else? Okay, stop doing multiple tasks concurrently. Absolutely. Multitasking is a myth. We should always think about doing one thing at a time properly. Deep work. Anything else? We should stop bothering QA about not filing bugs and maybe hiding bugs for our sake. Anything. It could be anything, right? Maybe we should any example. Okay, never mind. Let's move to continue. What shall we continue doing? We did in our sprint, which worked towards our sprint goal. We are happy about, and which actually was very efficient. What shall we continue doing? Maybe continue estimating the story points as we are doing right now. Continue using daily stand up within 15 minutes. Continue using maybe a particular tool, planning poker for our planning, which is very good, etc. Vendor coordination. Somebody's vendor coordination buddy. So vendor coordination, like it is, very good. Okay. Anything else? Think about the sprint. Think about what you could achieve, what you could not. Where was the roadblock? Maybe continue to take feedback and suggestions from the team. That's what we are doing here, by the way. Retrospective, Jeevan. A retrospective is only for the team, by the team, to get the feedback and suggestions so that we understand how can we do better. Continue to be process oriented. Yeah, it could be more specific. What kind of process you like, whether you like the Scrum process, whether you like the particular item in the Scrum process, or whether you like your office, any kind of different office processes, it would be much better because this is kind of incomplete. Continue to be process oriented, but in what terms? Because these items will be, we are discussing these items, right? We are helping, we are helping ourselves to understand what was lagging us, what actually made us achieve things faster, and what we should continue doing in order to achieve our goals. Continue looking for things online before going physically. That's also very good. Maybe you realize that, okay, once you read the feedback, and then you should visit the store, that maybe this store has much better chairs or XYZ rather than going physically. Well done. Okay, that's pretty much good. Let's talk about kudos and celebration. I think Sherlock already praised Dhananjay. Anybody would like to praise anybody else who did a fabulous job in the sprint? Although it was the effort of everyone in the team who did excellent job, but certainly there are exceptional leaders and players, teammates who go out of the bound and do things, right? So we should always appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's helped. So what we will do, we can export it as well. I think we can export this. We can save it, and the Scrum Master can actually create work items from it, and we can put it in the product backlog to improve things. And we should also make sure that we actually working towards this. Stop doing multiple tasks concurrently. We do not have anything like concrete. We cannot put it in a work backlog, but it's a cultural change, right? We should make sure that we are doing one thing and then we are moving to another. Similarly, there are items which can be go on the board, which cannot go on the board, but this has to be done again. Like when we will do the second retrospective, right? The sprint two, when we'll do the second retrospective, we see whether the action items from the last retrospective we did take items or we did not. If we did not, then we will put again it here. Like for example, in the next retrospective, I come and then we say can do better velocity management. Okay, that means we did not focus on better velocity management, or we did, but we are still not there where we can say that we are doing better velocity management, etc., etc. Right? So you will reiterate it again and again, and that's the process where your team will improve. I think one gentleman asked the questions that what will happen if we do this and that. Certainly, you might do things wrong. You might do things in a different way. But once you start doing retrospective, you understand, okay, this time, you know what? Our estimation was not good. Our planning was not good. Our tool was not good. Our culture was not good. Next time, we will try to remove this part. And then we'll see how the performance is. Maybe you are wrong. Maybe you are saying that you should stop relying on stop one vendor. But next time you say, okay, it's better to stick to one vendor because you know what? We stopped relying on one vendor, but managing multiple vendors was a problem for us, which created more work. So you can certainly come back again and say, okay, that time was wrong. I'll just start doing again, rely on one vendor, etc. Anything, right? So these are like action points which we will come through and which we always go through. That was the end of the feedback loop. If you see here, it was the end of the feedback loop. It goes again back to the team. They will do the same thing. The same iteration will happen again and again and again. And that's how your agile scrum works. This is the sprint. These are the team members. That's how you actually select the stories. You take the sprint, you run the sprint, you do the daily stand up, you do the sprint review to the stakeholders, get action items from them. Then you do the sprint retrospective after every, usually sprint retrospective is done on the last day of the sprint to make sure that we have inculcated everything. And now when we are starting with new things, we have to keep these action items in mind that these are the things which was hindering our performance. These are the things which actually expedited our performance. These are the things which we should continue doing, etc. So this is how conceptual wise agile or scrum looks like. Certainly next time when we will meet, we will put into action and we will put things in person where we will use a team, tool like Azure DevOps board in order to inculcate all these things. That training will be your hands-on training where you will actually now at that time we will certainly address all the questions related to your processes. How do you feel these things can be achieved in that particular tool, right? So first, when we'll do the next training of Agile DevOps boards, we will focus on how do we create teams, how do we create what do you call sprint plannings, how do we create product backlog, how do we create capacity, how do we add team members, how do we perform the sprint, how does the dashboard looks like, what are the different measurements which we can take in order to see how much capacity the team has been using, how much capacity it is still underutilized, everything, how much time is remaining and how much work has been completed. All the things we will see. We'll also talk about task level details, like how much hours has been estimated, how much story point has been estimated for that. So all those questions we will cover in the next training session. But this training was specifically to give you the essence of what is Scrum, what is Agile, what are the different pillars. I am pretty sure you might have been bored in the previous sessions where you went through all the theory. But you know what? When we start with anything, any language, we need to understand the framework. We need to understand what is the ABC. We need to understand the alphabets before we start implementing or start creating sentences or stories, right? So this is important to understand what are the different roles, what are the different terminologies, what are the different ceremonies or items, meetings, how do we create user stories, what are, because if somebody tells me user story as a layman, I would not understand till the time I actually go understand what is user story. And in user story also, when we started, we actually define user story as, okay, I want to do this, but that's not the case, right? There is a format how you need to, there is a framework associated with it, who, what, why. And still after doing this sessions, we still found that we are still missing on that. So basically these are the things which will help you to understand what are the conceptual things which you will be putting it actually on the board, and you will do your project management. So that's all, friends. That's all I had from my side. For example, when we started the training, we spoke about Agile Manifesto, software development, right? When we talked about individuals and interactions over processing tools, etc. We talked about the values and we talked about the principles, right? So all these things are Agile Manifesto. These are on different languages as well, right? So I'll share all the links. I'll share all the tools links as well, so that you can try it on your own time when you are actually planning your processes, etc. And basically, we'll focus more on the Azure DevOps boards next time when we meet. And that's what my plan is. So let's meet in the next meeting for your Azure DevOps boards training. Thank you, guys.